Welcome back to today's episode of Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Shaw from Stamford PD in Connecticut. 36 years total in law enforcement, has spent the last 7 years as Chief of Police. Welcome to the show, Chief Shaw.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
I'm looking forward to it. Give us a little bit of background. 36 years is a long time to be in law enforcement. I'm sure you've seen it all, you've experienced it all, but give us a little bit of background into who you are as a person and a little bit about your career.
Sure, I'd love to. Started at 21 years old. I left the University of Connecticut before finishing my degree, and I'm of a family of eight. There's eight of us in the
Wow.
family, so I'm number seven of eight. And I jumped into the police academy at a young age. Worked my way through the ranks. Did a lot of. I was heavily involved in narcotic enforcement, so I worked undercover for a few years, and then ran those squads. Made lieutenant after making sergeant, staying in there. And after being a lieutenant, I was asked to be an assistant chief. So a lot of my career was in the investigative wing, and not as much in patrol. Left in 2015 when I left as the assistant chief, and I became the chief of a town of 14 officers. Very small town near my home. Did that for 5 years, and then the city of Stamford reached out to me back in 2020 and asked me to come back as the chief of police, which was really like a full circle moment for spending my first 26 years in the building and now being able to come back. And really, I always try to I always say, let's make it better than when I first got here. So uh, my career has gone in so many different directions, but when I heard about your podcast about officer wellness, I will say the last 15, 20 years of my career, I've concentrated heavily on that because I think it's one of the most important things to keep the officers, if their mind is well, they're going to perform better. And any resource we can throw at them, we're going to try our best.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to talk to you about that and some of the things that you guys are doing in the wellness space.
Sure.
Um, I want to talk a little bit about your upbringing. I find it to be very interesting. One of eight. I'm an only child, so I don't even know how, we come from such different backgrounds, but what was your upbringing like? And maybe what was your biggest motivation for not only entering into this career, but focusing on wellness specifically?
Well, I would say that being one of eight, you're fighting for everything.
Mm.
We're in a wealthy family. My father worked on a railroad. My mother was a waitress. When I was 17, my father passed away of a massive heart attack. And I think that's really something that's always been in the back of my mind. As he died at the age of 56. And me and my four brothers, as we got closer to that age, it was almost like watching, an hourglass and saying, oh boy, 56 is coming. So it was in the back of your mind. So what would you do to prevent that? I'm very big into physical fitness, checkups, cardiologist, trying to eat right when I can, and separating work and having a balance. I thought that was really the most important thing. And having, older brothers and older siblings and really not letting my mother down. I always resort back to, my mother was a single mother from my age of 17 until she passed in '06, but that was the anchor. So really just having siblings that you didn't want to let down, and an Irish mother from the South Bronx who I would never let down. And I think really that was one of the driving factors of trying to be successful. I speak at graduations and promotions now, and one of the things I usually finish with is that you wear a certain patch for the city that you represent, but my most important piece on my uniform is my name tag and my last name. And I
Yeah.
always say I'll never let my family down, and that's really what directs me in the things I do. I have a strong command staff, which if I'm in a department now of 290. So having lieutenants and captains and assistant chiefs, and as time goes on in this role, you make promotions of the people that, they're replacing people that you may not have been involved in their promotion. So you create your team.
Mhm.
And if my team shares the same values that I have, I think all we can do is just get better for the people that work for us.
Yeah. And there's a couple things I want to circle back to, but the
Uh,
first thing, after your father passing and you saying that you felt like there was kind of a ticking time clock for you where you're like, okay, like we're reaching that time. We want to be proactive and make sure that we're taking care of ourselves. And then organizationally, you also started taking more of a proactive approach with everything that you guys are doing and all the things you're implementing. And one of the things that you did is implement heart attack screenings. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So I've used the same cardiologist from the city of Stamford, Dr. Schuster, probably for 30 years. And I got ahead of it because of what happened to my father. And I told all my brothers that, you got to stay up on this. Dr. Schuster and I, about probably 7 years ago, I found out about something called the calcium score, which is it's a simple screening, but it's not part of your normal annual checkup. You'll do the EKG, they'll put everything on you, you'll run on the treadmill. But this is another test that they do that talks about calcium buildup in your arteries.
Mhm.
So that's really what it's looking at. And the range can go from 0 to in the thousands. So when I first did it, I scored a 10 and I didn't think much of it. 5 years later, which is only about 3 years ago, I went back and I scored 100. And I said, oh, does this mean my heart attack's right around the corner? Because that number went up drastically.
Mhm.
Dr. Schuster calmed me down. I'm on statins to help with my cholesterol. And as we were talking, and I think at that point I was 50, yeah, it was probably I was just turning 56. So I asked him if he wanted to do a collaboration with me to try to offer it to our department. And I said, what would your guidelines be? So the doctor said, it's usually male more than female, but he'll offer it to anyone over the age of 40. He feels like that was what his guideline was. So we thought about it. He went out and got some grant money for us. So then I went to the union, our union, and offered this service saying, hey, this is something. I composed an email. I sent it out to the entire department. And what it did was it told the story of my dad dying at 56, of me just approaching 56, and how this score can help give you an idea of, if you have partial artery blockage, depending on your number, then you can see your own physician and get the help you need. So the buy-in was me going to every lineup, me sending an email, letting the entire department know, hey, there's something I'm going through, but I think for your own personal wellness, this would be a benefit for you as well. And a majority of the people took it. We had some success stories, which a success story, unfortunately, is someone who has a high number has to get treated.
Yeah.
So one of the examples we give is one of my sergeants in shape, fit, scored a number in the thousands, went to his physician and they started putting him on statins and changing his diet. He called his brother, who was a police officer in a town near us. He did the same test, and within a day, he was in an emergency room getting stents put in. So
Wow.
we felt like that's something that has impact. It still goes on as we speak. I'm a big preacher of this calcium test because it's a couple $100 out of your pocket if you don't have grant money, but it's not something where you have to mortgage your house to get this done. And I think it's something that shows the department that, hey, I'm going through this too. So if it helps you, let's see if you're interested. And on a side note, the amount of people that have come in my office who I'm not in the greatest shape in the world, but some of my officers who are not in the greatest of shape have knocked on my door and said, Chief, I'm so glad you did it. I scored a 0. I'm great. And I kind of look at him and I pause and I'm saying, well, I'm glad it's working for you. But so the good thing is you get a 0. I think it takes a lot of pressure off your mind because a lot of people have these thoughts with the stress that we all, the world in which we live in. So I think it's something that's benefited the department. The doctor has offered it to the fire department. And now in I guess our county, for those who aren't in the Connecticut area, there's probably 15 to 20 other towns, and a majority of them have followed the lead on that.
Wow.
And the doctor has helped facilitate that.
We talk a lot about ROI when it comes to things. What is the return on investment? And that story that you told on both sides of the maybe I'll say of the tracks. You have one that's like, ooh, I have peace of mind, like I feel good. Like that's a great return on investment. Now those people understand where they are. And on the other side, you quite literally saved a life. And what better return on investment than saving the lives of the people that work with you within the organization and being proactive about their wellness. I know you said that you were willing and open to share your story about what you were going through. And this made a big impact on getting the buy-in and
Yeah.
getting people to take advantage of that. Do you think that sharing your story and being open and vulnerable about the things that you're going through, do you think that that's a key piece of leadership and something that's helped you a lot in, the last 7 years of being chief?
Oh, without question. I mean, I went through the COVID years here. I went through post George Floyd.
Mhm.
I've in rebuilding the profession since 2020. The only way for me to have impact is to get in front of it and let them see you and speak at lineups and have those conversations. And when you walk out that door, I think you've planted a seed for them to really think about instead of just reading an email that just says, "Hey, here's something that my doctor is offering. Good luck to you."
Yeah.
I think it helps to be out in front of it and to say, "I've gone through this too, and I've lost a family member. My mother was a waitress and she raised 8 kids, so I can go into any community setting and talk to kids about being a single parent. I check that box. Losing someone because of their heart, right? My father didn't get tested enough, and obviously it had a major impact on my mother and the 8 of us. So I think when I tell those stories, they're open, they're honest. I'm not trying to gain anything from it. I just think that the more you open yourself up, I think that people see you as, someone that kind of gets it. I think that's what my hope is.
Well, they see you as human.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that we crave that. We want to connect with people on a human level. And when you can be authentic about what you've gone through, like you said, you're not trying to gain anything, you're genuinely wanting to help other people and share your story. I think people can relate to that and they can connect with that on a level that is really important. I think we have to be able to connect with our hearts, and a lot of the things that we do sometimes are very surface level, and I think by nature, sometimes we don't put ourselves out there to share those things, and it feels very surface level. But when we can open up and we can say, hey, I'm human too, I hurt too. These are things I've been through. And I think it not only gives a safe space for people to feel like they can also share their stories, but I genuinely do think that conversations save lives. I think the more that we can have these conversations, the less stigma, the more people are going to be open and receptive to being proactive and taking care of themselves.
Yeah, no, and I agree with that. And I think it's not just the youngest officer. The younger officer, I'm not even testing him, if you think about it.
Hmm.
I'm letting him know it's here. When he turns 40, he can get it tested. But this is really for the officers who've been here for a long time.
Yep.
They have the stress. They're stuck in a rut. They've gone through a divorce. They're having more struggles on a personal level than the young officer is. Right? The young officer is just trying to figure it out.
Yep.
So I think that's really the asset of the senior officer who's in patrol, who's going to those calls, but he's also mentoring the younger generation. So if you can really pinpoint them and let them know you care and try to support them, they're probably the hardest ones to support because they're kind of set in their ways.
Hmm. Yeah.
But I think that's part of the trickle down.
Well, and then also the younger officers now are going to be like, when I hit 40, they're going to have that kind of time clock for themselves too, of like, this is what I got to do when I hit 40, and it's creating more of that culture.
Yeah, I think you try to make it normal,
Yep.
right? That's really just like I think our peer support team, not to just kind of switch
Go ahead.
channels, but we have an extremely robust peer support team. It's something that myself and the administration spends a lot of time on it, spends a lot of funding. We use our training division. I go to my mayor and say I need to increase the budget for this peer support team. They're now a model of the rest of this county. And when something happens tragic in their towns, I'll get a call to see if my peer support can come and talk to their officers.
Mhm.
And now we're starting to train a trainer of some of the other officers who didn't have maybe a structured peer support team. And we created now our dispatch center has a peer support team. So really, I think that's really what you're trying to build. You want it to evolve into making it normal
Yep.
so that, if everyone's doing it and the right people are involved in it, that's the other part of it. You got to get the right people. You could start a program, but if the wrong people are there, the percentage of success goes down dramatically. So you hope that when you're building these programs out, that you kind of have in the background saying, I hope this person puts in, I'm going to talk to this person on the side and say you'll make a major impact if you spearhead this.
Yep.
And with that, I think it comes back tenfold with the success.
Can we talk a little bit, because I know there are a lot of chiefs that listen to this podcast that would be interested to kind of understand maybe the conversations that you have, how you're being proactive within the organization, and how you accomplish these things. There's a lot of chiefs that I think are like, where do you even start? How do you get the funding? How do you find the right people? What does that look like? Or even just the question mark of what is proactive versus reactive?
Mhm.
How do we make sure we get in front of these things? And how do we determine success? How do we know that these things are working? And I know that that was a very big kind of question, but any insight that you can relay to any other chiefs out there that maybe are wanting to either make their current program more robust or are in infancy stages and, wanting to build something out from scratch.
Yeah, again, I came back in 2020. There was already a peer support team. We just wanted to make it bigger and better. We felt that it was not it didn't reach the entire department. Like 290 officers is a lot of officers. When I was in charge of the smaller town of 14, I'm running to all 14 weekly.
Hmm.
When there's 290, you're not going to run into them all the time. So you got to make sure that your sergeants, your lieutenants, your supervisors are on top of it. So for me, it was just starting there. In my first months coming back, they already knew me, but saying how important this is to me. And if a sergeant only supervises 5 to 6 people daily, do you know what they're going through? Do you know if their families, if their wife, if the wife's pregnant, or if they're going through a divorce, or if someone's sick? If you don't know that, you're not doing your job. And I think that for me, it was more of like a grassroots
Mm.
find out. And sadly, when things go wrong, because inevitably they go wrong, and there are off-duty incidents that occur with law enforcement officers. And when those off-duty incidents occur, and we have to address them both through internal affairs, discipline, and outside agencies, if there's an arrest or something like that, if there's drinking involved, we can then go back and pull in that sergeant lieutenant and say, how did you miss this? Right? How did you let this? We're going to support the individual, right? If it's a first time, if it's a habitual repeat, obviously we're not going to hang on to someone that's continually making mistakes. But
Mm.
someone makes a mistake because of a substance issue or something like that. And I think our success comes from, or mine personally, is having a very strong relationship with my union, higher, the president, the vice president of the union, where they should be able to feel comfortable if someone in this department is going through something and they need help. And over time, I've been able to prove to them that I will help them.
Mhm.
Sometimes I can't help them because whatever happened was at a different level. And then at that point, it's something that legally I can't help them. But if it's someone who's going through a problem because, they just had a kid and they're drinking and the wife doesn't want them in the house and nobody knows about it until it's too late. What do we do with that person? And I only say that because I was in the elevator earlier today, and one of those officers who I was fortunate enough to assist in getting into a program and getting out of a program, this was a few years back, is now in such a different path and so grateful for the opportunity. So I know that he's on my peer support team now, right? So there's an example of it. I think what you do is you find those people who've been through it, and if they can buy into what you're doing because you're being honest with them and you're fair, they're going to sell the program,
Yeah.
right? I'm not going to have to go to lineup because they're going to see this officer who they know went through problems, came out of it, and now he's in a specialty team doing a great job. And this was only 2 years later. So I think really that for a new chief or for someone who's trying to find a way is, unfortunately, you have to use the one who's been through it if they're open to being part of the solution.
Mhm. Wow, thank you. I love how you said that the first is just boots on the ground effort. Talking to leadership, making sure that you know your people, as much as you can so you can identify those signs and try to get ahead of it before something happens. And then if and when something happens, and like you said, chances are something will happen at some point, how do we build trust and prove to everybody that we're on their team, we're on their side, and all we want is for them to be successful. And then once you prove success, how do you get them to be your advocates for the things that you're doing?
And again, it comes back to, are you fair? Are
Mm,
you across the board? You hold everyone about accountable around the same, right? And I think when people see that, they're always going to complain about something. They're going to find something to complain about, which is fine. But being fair, having balance, preaching that, and just being there for people.
yeah. I wanted to also ask you, because I know that utilization is something that you guys focus on, making sure that people are taking advantage of the things that are being offered to them. And I wanted to first ask, how do you identify success within the things that you're offering? Is there a specific utilization percentage? Are you looking for stories of people who are coming back and saying, hey, this helped me? How do you, as an organization, define success? And how do you encourage people? Because this is the number one conversation we have is, we can offer everything, but how do we convey the message for people to want to take action for themselves?
I feedback is my answer, and feedback comes in so many different directions.
Mm,
I'll give you a couple examples. One is after George Floyd, the nation wanted every officer to go through implicit bias training and, basically strip the officers down. That every officer in the country was a horrible officer and they needed to be brought up a different way. They had to restructure everything. I must have had 20 different companies come in wanting to teach it.
mm,
And then one of them, and I'm going to give him a plug. You could Google it. He's a great speaker. Q Williams. His company is Dedication to Community, and he's an ex-FBI agent, ex-U.S. attorney, and he comes in and he speaks to the officers about things that he went through. And we always talk about being fair. You hear the cliches of treat people how you want your family to be treated, or that's how you want your officers to be, and all of them are accurate. But when someone like that comes in, now the odds of me getting feedback on an evaluation after a topic like this, if I find the wrong person to teach this 4 hour block, I know the feedback is there's about 10% chance of success because at that point in 2020, 2021, it was an onslaught of information in a negative way.
yeah.
He gave a 4 hour block and 90% of the feedback was positive. So to me, that's part of it. As I said earlier, you got to get the right people.
Mhm.
And that's one example of what we're talking about. I think when it comes down to, as far as the calcium score, as far as the peer support, it's the feedback from other agencies that say, "Hey, your officers came in and spoke to my team. I am so grateful you did that." Now that cost me a lot of, it cost me overtime money. My people leave my city and go somewhere else. I have a city support system. My mayor supports what we're doing. She's a strong believer in it. So that's part of it too. It's got to be that perfect storm. And I'm fortunate in the position I am right now that that is working. But I also know there's times where the purse strings are not. They're not that this is anything you want to do, but we show the data that what we're doing is being successful.
Mm. I love that you said feedback. How can we show that it's successful through people saying that it's successful? And then when you have that feedback, it feeds more into what you guys are doing from a programming perspective or a resource
Oh, definitely.
perspective. But then it also helps to, gosh, I don't want to use the word like sell it, for budget reasons, but it makes it easier to ask for the funds if you already know that the feedback is positive.
Yeah, and I gave you an example of a success, but I can give you two that weren't successful. A 4 hour block of de-escalation where everyone basically wrote a zero on it, saying this is the wrong person to talk to us. I live and I learn. One of the things we did, I think it was last year, was a 4 hour block on your mental health, your financial health, and your physical health.
Mhm.
So we had companies come in and speak to everyone. It was a 4 hour block for every officer in the department to be able to sit through this, and everyone's at a different point in their life. right? Someone wants to know, how do I save for college? Someone wants to know how much do I need to retire? And someone brand new should know that they could put into a 457 plan. So again, it's just offering as many services to them about their well-being.
Mm.
They're always going to be trained on how to shoot, how defensive tactics, the laws and arrest. But if you take the time out to throw some of these wellness initiatives, I think it's important. I have a group that we were able to get funding for a couple Pelotons in our gym. So now any officer can log in and they can jump on a Peloton before or after work. And it's a small token, but it just shows where our mentality is as an administration, making sure that we continue to offer things for them.
I appreciate you talking about some of the things that you've done that haven't worked, because I think it's really relatable for a lot of people who are listening. But I also appreciate that you're not afraid to continue trying different things. I always make the joke, I'm like, it's like dating, like if you go on one bad date or two bad dates, are you going to stop dating forever? Probably
Right.
not. Like you want to keep trying until you find that person or that solution that's good for you, and that works for you. And so I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, like you haven't been perfect. There's been some things that have been a flop, but you're also willing to keep trying.
Yeah, and I think the key is it's that I've used you said it before, the boots on the ground. If those supervisors don't see it, they're the ones, right? But if the other officer's next to him and notices something's different on one of his partners or someone in his district or his zone, and they're comfortable enough to tell that sergeant or that supervisor, say, hey, listen, something's off.
Hmm.
Well, that's when our red flags go up. That's when our peer support gets up. It doesn't always get to me. Now they go right to the peer support team. I don't even hear about it until afterwards, which I totally enjoy because I'd much rather it be handled at a lower level so I don't have to make a discipline decision. So I don't have to, you know what I mean, I pull someone from out of something they're doing because that tells me it's working,
Yeah.
right? So sometimes the lack of feedback for me is a positive thing for the workings of the department.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. As a chief, what is your ultimate mission or goal with all of this stuff? Everything that we've talked about, all of the wellness resources and efforts that you've put in to your organization. What is your biggest goal or mission with it all?
I want every officer to have a balance. And I'm very fortunate. I have a wife of 34 years. I have two beautiful kids. I go home. I look forward to going home. I look forward to going on vacation. I look forward to going on bike rides. I also look forward to golfing with my friends. So I've created this balance over 36 years. But what I've watched and what I've seen is some people will chase the extra shift and then it's okay to make some extra money. But all of a sudden it becomes 7 days a week, 30 of 31 days working,
Mm.
and they get lost in that. And that's a difficult thing because I'm not saying people don't need money, that people have bills to pay in college, but if you don't keep that balance of having friends outside of this profession, of being able to take time off, right? If you're working 7 days a week, take one of them off,
Mm.
right? Make sure. And if you're working 16-hour days, a lot of times, because a lot of police departments in the country are understaffed, so people are getting ordered to say it's a horrific problem that we have, but it's a systemic, and we're trying to fix it.
Yep.
We're getting away from that curve because we're getting back to what the amount of officers we're supposed to have. Those are tough times. Um, but what I would tell the younger officers, if you're ordered to stay a shift or two, then don't come into work. Like your days off are your days off now. Because the money you thought you were going to make on the weekend, we just told you had to stay. So you already made it. So give yourself that break, find that balance, and it could be any hobby, anything that lets you kind of like unplug from this profession because it's a heavy profession.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know that you just gave some really, really good advice right there, but I have to ask the single question for the end before we close out. But if there's one piece of advice that you could leave with the younger generation, what would it be?
I kind of just, I guess I gave it up a minute ago, but
Yeah.
I can shape it a little differently. Um, I would say to the younger officer, to myself when I was younger, internally in the department. and externally outside the department. So I just touched on externally, really, which is the balance. Internally, in a bigger department or even a smaller department, if you have strong values when you start this job, this profession, why would they change? Why would I have pride in my name tag and I won't let my family down. So as long as I stay true to that and I find mentors and I find people who are like-minded, then my path and my journey and the way I respond to people when I go on a call, they're not gonna be upset when I leave. Obviously, if there's a crime, we have to do it, but on a day-to-day situation where someone's just having a bad day and having the opportunity to make their day better, if you can keep those values when you came on as a 21-year-old kid out of Yukon and you get to, go home saying, all right, I think I did something good today. Find those mentors. They're there, right? Not everyone is a grumpy officer who's been through a lot, who just wants to punch in, punch out. There's a lot of officers that are senior to you that are just like you and just follow their lead. Watch how they do it, and your career will be just as good as theirs. There's a reason why they're happy. And if you ask that senior officer why you're happy, he's probably going to talk about the balance we talked about earlier.
I love it. Find the balance, take time off when you're not at work, and then hold true to your values and who you are.
100%.
I also really appreciate, and I meant to say this earlier, but you reiterated it, and I appreciate that you brought it back. But I really like that guiding light because I don't think that there's anyone that I've ever talked to that wants to let their family down, that wants to let each other down, that wants to let themselves down. And so for you to say, hey, for you specifically, you're like, I just knew that I never wanted to let my family down, that I wanted to hold true to who I was, my name, my values, and that everything that I did was going to make sure that I didn't let my family down. I think that is such a powerful statement, and I think all of us can relate to that. I think if people are searching for that thing to grab onto, what an excellent thing to grab onto because none of us want to let ourselves, our family, each other down.
Yeah, and honestly, in closing, I say it all the time. As I've gotten older, my families have gotten larger. Right now, I have nieces, grandnieces, and I know what this title means to other people. It doesn't mean as much to me as it does to them, if
Mm.
that makes sense to you. I say it all the time that I'm a husband, a father, a coach, a neighbor, and then the last thing I am is a chief. But I know it means a lot to other people. So I keep that in the back of my mind too, to make sure that, as much as they like that title that their uncle has or somebody has, I'm going to make sure that I keep that shine on there for them. But I know I could leave tomorrow and someone else could be sitting in this place, and I hope they have the same values as I have. So this department stays in the same path it's on. But yeah, to your point, I think that's important for me, and it's helped me probably get to where I am.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on here and showcasing what you guys are doing organizationally with wellness and leadership. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for the invite.
Of course.